Hi, Banana Recap here. Today I'm going to explain a 2009 movie called I Love You, Beth Cooper.
Oh, God. Oh,
Dennis Coverman is a high school senior, and instead of his farewell speech he confesses his love to Beth Cooper, the cheerleading captain with whom he has been unrequitedly in love for years. The guy was prompted to take this step by his friend Richie, otherwise the girl would never know of his existence at all.
This big speech at graduation, you don't exist.
During his speech, Dennis admits that he has been in love with Beth since the 7th grade. The guy urges the rest of the class to confess what they've always been afraid to say, too, setting some students as an example.
I'm a stuck-up bitch. 'Cause deep down, I believe I am worthless.
Including his friend Richie, who is urged to confess his non-traditional orientation. On the street, Dr. Gleason approaches Dennis, threatening with just one phone call to destroy the boy's dream of getting into Stanford for his performance art. Dennis complains that if not for his final speech, Beth would never have noticed him, after which he wonders if Mrs. Gleason herself has ever been in love. The woman recalls her failed encounters with guys, after which she wishes Dennis good luck. Noticing Dennis, Beth approaches him. For his silly but brave act, she promises to let him live. It's a fitting moment, so Dennis invites the girl to a party at his house tonight. At this point, Kevin, Beth's boyfriend, approaches him, beginning to use physical force for making fun of Dennis at his final speech. Dr. Gleason saves Dennis by saying that there is no showdown on school grounds. Dennis and Richie return from school. Richie doesn't understand why his friend questioned his heterosexuality, since he's just a normal guy. Dennis recalls an old time when he and Richie watched a movie where the main characters were fighting with swords. Richie then suggested reenacting that battle, but not with swords, but with their junk, but Dennis doesn't want to remind Richie of that episode. According to the guy, he's never seen Richie with a girlfriend, to which the friend says the same thing about Dennis, but the guy reminds him that he did have a girlfriend after all. Richie pulls out a brand new iPod from the bag, a gift from Dennis' parents for graduating high school. Richie's father gave him a $230,000 bill, which he now has to pay him back. The time of the party, for which Dennis prepares in turmoil, is approaching. The boy's father hopes that Dennis isn't wearing those awful underpants tonight that would make Beth run away from this house, if Dennis is lucky enough to get to his underwear, of course. The kids' parents are going to leave the teens to have some fun. As soon as Dennis's mother leaves, his father, Mr. Coverman, suggests that the boys have a hearty laugh, for it is their last summer before going to university, and reminds them that there are condoms in his locker. Dennis and Richie wait for the guests to arrive. With screeching tires, Beth's car pulls into the intersection, pulling up in front of Dennis' house. Richie asks Beth where her boyfriend Kevin is. The girl tells him to fuck off, because one of his buddies almost raped her friend Treese. Upon entering the house, the girls don't see any other guests, believing that they came first.
Are we the first ones here? Yeah, we are never first.
Beth's phone receives a call from Kevin, who is looking for the girl all over town. Treese and Cammy ask for something to drink. Dennis' house only has champagne, which Mr. Coverman lets the teens treat their friends to. Tris doesn't really want champagne, as it makes her horny. Upon hearing this, Richie runs into Dennis' father's room, finding the condoms Mr. Corman left for them in his locker. After failing to open a bottle of champagne, Dennis falls to the floor. Beth sits on top of him, putting cold waffles on Dennis' bruise. Feeling the guy's erection, Beth gets up, which she tells her girlfriends. At this point, Kevin arrives at Dennis' house. Seeing his SUV, Dennis asks him not to open Kevin's door because he will kill the nerd. Dennis closes all the windows in the house, but forgets to lock the door to the backyard, through which Kevin and his buddies enter the house. The boys start a mayhem at Dennis's house. Frightened, the losers go up to the second floor, locking themselves in Dennis's room. From his closet, Richie retrieves the Jedi lightsaber, tossing it to his friend and hiding in the closet himself. Kevin kicks in the door and enters the room, noticing a poster of Beth on the ceiling above Dennis' bed. Nerd turns on the sword, saying that he has received special training in the wielding of this sword. Kevin breaks off the skeleton's arms, beating Dennis with these bones. Beth runs into the room. She rips off the skeleton's skull and smashes it over Kevin's head, giving Dennis a chance to escape. The guy jumps out the window through which Richie escaped earlier. Kevin calls for his buddies, with whom they begin a manhunt for the losers. Dennis runs out onto the road looking for Richie, but he gets run over by Beth. The girls put the guy in the car, and then Richie shows up and hops into Beth's car, too. Noticing Kevin, the girl jumps out of her seat. Dennis asks Beth for the phone, from which she tries to call her parents and explain the mess in the house, but the girl throws the phone in the street, believing that it is the one Kevin is tracking her on. The teens arrive at the gas station. Beth tries to buy a beer by showing the clerk a fake ID, but the clerk refuses to sell alcohol.
You've lost weight, Patricia. You certainly don't look 37.
Well, thank you.
Beth offers to kiss Sam so that whenever he remembers that kiss, he'll have to change his underpants, unless of course he sells them beer. Dennis is very disappointed in the girl's act and thinks that she is not who he was in love with.
She's not Beth Cooper.
The teenagers arrive in the woods, where they start drinking beer. Noticing how Beth opens the bottle, Dennis decides to follow her, but breaks a tooth. Meanwhile, Beth's favorite song starts playing in the car. The girl glances at her girlfriends to leave them alone. Realizing what's going on, Richie also leaves after the girls. The trio walks out to the corral with the cows. Treese suggests dropping one of the cows, and it's up to Richie to do it, since he's kind of a guy. At this time, Dennis tells Beth that she doesn't look like the girl whose poster is hanging above his bed. She deserves better than making out with a salesman for 12 cans of beer. They hear the mooing of cows who rush off in pursuit of Richie, Treese, and Cammy. After finishing their beers, the teens head on their way. To make it more fun to drive, Beth turns off the lights, but then turns them back on and a car suddenly appears in front of them and they crash into it. Dennis's half-naked parents emerge from the car. The guy is about to go to turn himself in, but Beth stops him and they drive off further, arriving at the mansion of Valley Woolley, the daughter of wealthy parents, whom Dennis called a narcissistic bitch in his final speech. The girls go straight to the pool, and Dennis, noticing Beth talking to the other guys, goes to the bathroom, where he is caught by Greg, about whom the guy also made an unfortunate remark at his farewell speech. Dennis thinks Greg is going to kill him, but the thug starts crying, realizing his mistakes and regretting beating up the others, and then hugs the nerd, calling him his best friend. Dennis goes back to Richie, who tells him that if it hadn't been for today, the guy would never have known what a bitch Beth Cooper is and no girl Dennis would ever have reached the ideal Beth. Patty and Victoria approach them. Noticing the abrasions on Dennis' face, the girls wonder what happened. Richie lies that Dennis got into a fight with Kevin and he is now lying in the hospital because Dennis got him beaten up. After learning from the girls that Kevin is upstairs right now, Dennis and Richie want to escape, but they are stopped by Cammy and Beth.
What are you doing here?
From above comes the voice of Valley Woolley, who at this moment is embracing Kevin. After grabbing the losers, Kevin and his buddies take them into the living room, where they are going to beat them up. The school coach intervenes and sets the rules for the fight, but Dennis gives up prematurely, only that doesn't save the guy. Greg shows up and notices the battered Dennis, for which he knocks Kevin and his buddies down, as well as the coach. Kevin gets up and knocks Greg out, then prepares to deal with Dennis, but at that moment Kevin's SUV, driven by Beth, flies into the living room window. After picking up Dennis, Richie, Cammy, and Treese, Beth drives everyone to the school, the keys to which are entrusted to the girl, as she is captain of the cheerleading team. In the gym, the girls perform their number with Richie. After the dance, the girls run to the shower and Richie and Dennis follow them. Upon entering the locker room, Dennis looks away, but Beth asks him not to be embarrassed, after which she throws off her towel. The girls go into the shower and call the guys with them. Richie runs off after them and Dennis starts to undress, but that's when Kevin shows up in the locker room. Richie emerges from the shower and starts beating the guys with a wet towel, something he's been trained to do since he was a kid. Richie asks his friends to run away, but stays behind to fight the bullies. After beating them all, Richie jumps out onto the street, where his friends are waiting for him in Beth's car, which Kevin drove. The company heads to Treese's father's country house. Looking out the window, Beth pronounces that it will soon be dawn, asking if anyone else wants to watch the sunrise. Treese and Cammy grab Richie and drag him into the bedroom, where they are convinced of his heterosexuality, and Beth and Dennis finally kiss. In the morning, Beth brings Dennis home, where the boy is greeted by his parents. Dennis needs to be punished for trashing the house, but his father doesn't know how, to which the boy agrees to any punishment, for it was worth it. Dennis says goodbye to Beth, kissing the girl on the cheek, but she kisses the guy on the lips, then hugs him, thanking Dennis for his true love for her.
It's not to love.
To the outgoing Beth, the boyfriend promises to marry her when they meet at the reunion in 10 years, if they are both available.
That's a promise.
The girls get in the car and drive off. After a night with the two girls, Richie admits to being unconventional. To avoid waiting 10 years for the reunion, the guys figure out how to ask Beth out on a date. That's where the movie ends. Thanks for watching and see you on the channel.
I think my dad wants us to have sex.
With each other?
No.